For weeks, Caitlin Clark seemed to be taking hit after hit on the court, while the Wnba remained largely silent. Fans were upset, commentators danced around the topic, and frustration kept building. Then something changed. The silence finally ended, and the voices that stepped forward didn't come from inside the Wnba. They came from some of the biggest names in the NBA. These weren't carefully crafted PR comments or routine compliments. They were genuine reactions from players who had seen what was happening and weren't afraid to speak on it. LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Stephen Curry, and several others didn't just praise Clark's game. They openly showed support after witnessing the physical treatment she had been dealing with. And Curry, in particular, appeared unwilling to stay quiet any longer. After watching the controversy unfold and seeing the constant contact Clark was absorbing, he eventually spoke up, and his comments quickly spread throughout the basketball world. When someone with Curry's influence publicly pushes back against the way Caitlin Clark has been treated, people listen. He wasn't the only one. Multiple NBA stars went on record to make it clear that Clark isn't some temporary sensation or social media phenomenon. In their eyes, she's a legitimate elite talent, and they believe the attention and treatment surrounding her deserve to be taken seriously. Some of the comments delivered by at least 6 NBA All-Stars were direct, passionate, and far stronger than many expected. It wasn't a passing remark. It wasn't a safe answer. It was the kind of endorsement that showed just how highly some of basketball's biggest names view Clark and the influence she has already created. And as more NBA stars continued to share their honest thoughts, it became increasingly clear that the support behind Caitlin Clark stretched far beyond the WNBA, reaching some of the most respected players in the entire sport.
Oh man, Caitlin she's a beast, man. Like, and they love her. So I'll probably say Caitlin Clark. I love Tyrese, but she's another level in terms of just the love that.
Take a moment to consider what Pascal Siakam was really saying. He wasn't measuring Caitlin Clark against other Wnba stars. Instead, he placed her in a conversation alongside one of the NBA's most exciting young floor generals, Tyrese Halliburton. Siakam went even further, saying that few athletes were receiving the kind of support and attention that Clark was getting. That goes beyond simple praise. It's recognition. It's proof that her influence reaches far outside the Wnba and into the broader basketball world. When a player's name starts coming up in discussions usually reserved for NBA stars, it says something important. Siakam could have mentioned countless players, but he chose Caitlin Clark. That decision alone speaks volumes. This wasn't just another catchy headline or a routine compliment. It reflected something bigger. It showed that Clark has broken through the invisible wall that often separates conversations about the NBA and WNBA, and the fact that Siakam voluntarily brought her up, without any obligation to do so, tells you just how much respect she's earned. Then there's Obi Toppin. He's not known for delivering long speeches or creating viral sound bites. His personality has always been more about energy and action than dramatic statements. That's exactly why his comments about Caitlin Clark stood out. There was nothing rehearsed about what he said. No carefully crafted media answer, just straightforward honesty. And in an era filled with polished PR responses, that kind of authenticity carries extra weight. Toppin plays with confidence, excitement, and plenty of flair. But whenever the topic turned to Caitlin Clark, there was a noticeable change in his tone. It wasn't merely admiration. It sounded like genuine appreciation. The kind of respect reserved for someone whose impact extends well beyond statistics and highlight reels. Because in Toppin's eyes, Clark wasn't just putting up impressive numbers. She was doing something bigger. She was changing the conversation, and fellow NBA players were beginning to recognize that in a very real way.
Caitlin's amazing. Super amazing. She's a great player. Having her be courtside and watching our games is awesome. We see the excitement that she has on the sides, but just like she's doing that, we do the same. Like when they're playing, like it's so much. It's a joy.
What stands out most isn't just the words that were used. It's the way the respect was given. Players like Obi Toppin didn't speak about Caitlin Clark and the Wnba as something separate or secondary. They talked about them on equal footing with the NBA, celebrating accomplishments with the same enthusiasm and appreciation they show their own peers. That kind of mutual respect is rare, and it matters. When NBA players see Caitlin Clark sitting courtside or following her games, there's a sense that the connection goes beyond simple celebrity recognition. It's not just, look who's here. It's genuine basketball appreciation, a recognition between athletes who understand the game and respect what they're watching. Obi's comments may not have dominated headlines, but that's precisely what makes them meaningful. They represented something bigger than a viral quote. They reflected a shift in how Caitlin Clark is viewed. She's no longer being discussed simply as a women's basketball star. In the eyes of many NBA players, she's just a hooper. Someone they see as part of the basketball fraternity. And once NBA players start talking about you the same way they talk about each other, you've already crossed a line that very few athletes ever reach. Of course, it's easy to offer generic praise. Athletes do it all the time. She's amazing. I love her game. She's incredibly talented. Those kinds of compliments are common. But Tyrese Haliburton approached things differently. Sharing Indianapolis with Caitlin Clark gave him a front-row seat to her journey. His support wasn't about making headlines or scoring public relations points. He wasn't speaking up because it was expected. His perspective came from watching her up close, understanding what she deals with, and seeing firsthand how she's handled the constant spotlight and pressure without backing down. That familiarity gave his words more weight. He wasn't speaking from a distance. He was speaking as someone who had witnessed the chaos surrounding.
I think for me, getting to actually spend time around her, be around her, get to know her personally, she's just an amazing person, an amazing player. She deals with a lot there's a lot of rhetoric behind her that she really has no control over, and I think that the way she handles that is just amazing. Like, I think when it comes to the game of basketball, like, she's probably top 5 most famous people that are playing right now, just in general. That includes our...
Tyrese Haliburton wasn't throwing out empty praise when he talked about Caitlin Clark. He placed her in conversations, alongside names like LeBron James, Stephen Curry, and Nikola Jokic, players who define today's era of basketball. That comparison didn't come from hype or social media buzz. It came from what he's seen with his own eyes. Haliburton understands the pressure that comes with being the face of a franchise. He sees the numbers, the endless media coverage, and the passion that fans bring every night. And as an NBA All-Star still early in his own career, he recognizes that the spotlight surrounding Caitlin Clark has been even more intense. What often gets missed is the compassion behind his comments. Tyrese wasn't just defending Clark the player, he was supporting Clark the person. His words acknowledged the criticism, the constant scrutiny, and the distractions that have followed her, despite the fact that she never asked for any of it. His message was clear: Caitlin Clark is built for this stage, and fully capable of handling everything that comes with it. And then there's LeBron James. When LeBron speaks, the sports world doesn't just hear him, it pays attention. Every statement he makes is dissected, every opinion analyzed. That's the influence of someone who has been the face of basketball for more than 2 decades. So when LeBron addressed Caitlin Clark, it wasn't some casual compliment or throwaway remark. There was real conviction behind it. His comments carried a deeper meaning and served as a powerful endorsement. At a time when debates, criticism, and non-stop noise surrounded Clark, LeBron's message cut through all of it and focused on what truly mattered. He recognized the significance of the moment, the impact Clark was having on the game, and the challenges that came with it. And with one statement, he reminded everyone that this wasn't just another storyline. It was a transformational moment in basketball, and one worthy of respect.
Everybody is looking for you to say anything, and they're gonna splice it and cut it and make it a negative thing. And I think for her, the one thing that I love that she's bringing to her sport, more people want to watch. More people want to tune in. I saw for the first time that they had a chartered plane for the first time in their league history. They flew private. That should be celebrated in his own right.
LeBron James wasn't just speaking up for Caitlin Clark. He was speaking up for the growth of the game itself. He has watched everything that has come with her rise, and he understands that the challenge goes far beyond media attention. What Clark is experiencing is bigger than headlines. It's a cultural shift. LeBron knows exactly what it's like to carry the weight of an entire league and become the centerpiece of a movement that changes the sport. He's lived through the enormous expectations, the constant criticism, and the pressure that comes with having a target on your back every single night. Maybe that's why he sees something familiar in Caitlin. She didn't just earn his admiration, she earned something even more meaningful, his respect. And for a player of LeBron's stature, that's a completely different level of praise. Then there's Trae Young. It takes confidence to challenge one of the most exciting long-range shooters in basketball to a three-point contest. It takes even more confidence to be the one initiating that challenge. That's exactly the kind of personality Trae has always had. Known for his fearless style, deep-range shooting, and bold attitude, Young has never been afraid to speak his mind. But whenever the conversation turns to Caitlin Clark, there's a noticeable shift in his voice. The swagger is still there, the playful energy remains, but underneath it is unmistakable respect. This isn't simply one great shooter complimenting another, it's something deeper than that. It's one elite player recognizing excellence in another. It's peer-to-peer acknowledgement happening in real time. And that says plenty about how Caitlin Clark is viewed among some of basketball's biggest stars. She's no longer being discussed as a novelty or a passing sensation. She's being talked about by NBA players the same way they talk about fellow competitors, athletes whose talent demands attention and whose impact has earned genuine respect.
You were hype about Steph and Sabrina. I know that you have spoken about Caitlin Clark. You're a big Caitlin Clark fan.
Oh, yeah.
She, of course, is an excellent shooter. Would you ever do like a Caitlin Trae three-point contest at All-Star?
Of course I would. I've gotten to talk to her too throughout her college years. We're the only two people that ever led college in points and assists. That's a crazy stat. I'd have to definitely practice a lot more than I have for these previous three-point competitions. Nah, I'd be ready for sure.
Start with this remarkable fact. Only 2 players in NCAA history have ever finished a season leading the nation in both scoring and assists. That's not some random statistic. It places you in an incredibly rare class of basketball greatness. And that's exactly why Trae Young's comments about Caitlin Clark carried so much weight. There was nothing condescending about the way he talked about her. No forced compliments, no polite gestures. His praise came from a place of genuine respect, recognizing a talent that doesn't come around very often. In fact, when the idea of a three-point contest came up, Trae didn't act as if victory would be automatic. Quite the opposite. He admitted he'd need to sharpen his game and get some extra shots up. For a player known as one of the league's elite shooters, that's about as strong a sign of respect as you can give. That's because Caitlin Clark isn't merely included in basketball conversations anymore. She's helping define them. And Trae Young seems more than willing to share the spotlight with her, or even test himself against her on equal terms. Then there's Paul George. Paul has never been someone who throws around compliments just for attention. He doesn't speak to create headlines. When he offers an opinion, it's usually because he wants people to understand the bigger picture. That's why his thoughts on Caitlin Clark stood out. He didn't immediately jump into praise, nor did he focus on criticism. Instead, he stepped back and looked at the entire landscape. While much of the conversation surrounding Clark has centered on highlight clips, controversial fouls, and record-breaking shooting performances, Paul George approached the topic from a completely different angle. He wasn't interested in the viral moments. He focused on the context. He looked beyond the social media debates and recognized the larger impact Clark has had, not just as a player putting up incredible numbers, but as someone changing the attention, energy, and conversation around the sport itself. And coming from a veteran like Paul George, that perspective carried just as much significance as any highlight reel or statistical accomplishment.
You gotta put it in perspective, right? These girls have been grinding to grow the game of basketball in the WNBA. They've been grinding to grow the sport to the world, the viewerships. They've been grinding for all of this. And then you have this girl that comes along from college and is an instant change. She's handed pretty much being the face of the league. There's going to be girls that are offended.
Paul George's comments weren't meant as criticism of Caitlin Clark. If anything, they served as a reminder of just how dramatically the landscape has changed. He never questioned her talent or impact. In fact, by describing her influence as immediate and transformative, he was acknowledging just how special her rise has been. But he also pointed to something that often gets overlooked. There are veterans in the Wnba who spent years building the league into what it is today. They fought for better treatment, pushed for improvements like charter flights, competed in front of small crowds, and did much of it without the attention and media coverage that today's stars enjoy. Those players work just as hard, yet they never experience the same spotlight that has followed Caitlin Clark from day one. And while Clark has earned every opportunity she's received, Paul George recognized that such a rapid shift can create complicated emotions. When someone arrives and almost immediately becomes the face of the league, it's natural for some longtime players to feel conflicted. He wasn't excusing resentment or defending negativity. He was simply adding perspective and showing that the situation is more complex than many people realize. By doing that, Paul highlighted how significant this moment really is. Caitlin Clark isn't just at the center of the attention, she's at the center of a transformation that's affecting everyone connected to the game. Then there's Luka Doncic. Anyone who has followed Luka knows exactly how he operates. He's straightforward, emotional, and rarely concerned with saying what people want to hear. There's no extra polish and very little filtering. That's why his reaction to a simple question about women's basketball stood out. There was no hesitation, no carefully crafted answer designed to avoid controversy. Luka answered the way he always does, with honesty, and with just a few words, he made his position unmistakably clear, leaving his own mark on a conversation that continues to grow across the basketball world.
Your favorite women's basketball player?
Caitlin Clark.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't like Paige Buchers?
She's okay. I didn't see her playing in the women's NBA.
Luka Doncic wasn't interested in revisiting college accomplishments or debating potential. His focus was on what matters most, what Caitlin Clark is doing right now at the professional level. To Luka, she's no longer just the star who dominated March Madness or generated endless headlines in college basketball. She's proving herself against the best every night. Despite the physical play, the pressure, and the constant attention, she continues to produce, create opportunities for teammates, and deliver when it matters. And when a generational talent like Luka Doncic gives that kind of acknowledgement, it feels less like praise and more like confirmation. In his eyes, Caitlin Clark has already passed the test. She doesn't have to prove she belongs, she already does. She's not knocking on the door anymore. She's inside. Meanwhile, Stephen Curry had been watching everything unfold from afar. He saw the physical treatment Clark was receiving. He watched the debates surrounding it. He noticed the lack of strong responses and the silence that often followed. Eventually, one of the most respected voices in basketball decided enough was enough. Steph Curry chose to speak, and when he did, his message went beyond simply defending Caitlin Clark. His words sent a signal to everyone paying attention, a reminder that what was happening deserved to be recognized, and that elite talent, regardless of where it plays, deserves respect.
I'm sick of watching Caitlin getting attacked. If the league doesn't step up and protect her, things are going to get ugly real fast.
Stephen Curry's comments went far beyond simply offering support. They carried a message that resonated throughout the basketball world. When someone of Curry's stature chooses to speak publicly, players, coaches, and fans all pay attention. His words weren't just an endorsement. They were a signal that what he was seeing deserved to be taken seriously. This wasn't casual praise or a polite compliment. You could hear genuine admiration. There was a level of appreciation that comes from one elite shooter recognizing another player who shares that same fearless approach to the game. For Curry, it wasn't just about the numbers or the highlights. It was about the mentality, the willingness to take difficult shots, to embrace pressure, and to play with complete confidence regardless of the moment. And as he described those traits, it was clear that he saw something familiar in Caitlin Clark, something that earned not only his attention, but his respect.
I saw somebody break down the release time, which is pretty much identical to mine. And it hurt just confidence. You can't help but watch when she plays, where she's shooting from, the range, the confidence, the flair. Like, she's a performer. It's crazy though, just because her shot is like that. It's at that level. If you really watch, like, her floor game is as impressive. So it's kind of the total package.
Think about that for a moment. Stephen Curry, the player many consider the greatest shooter the game has ever seen, openly spoke about Caitlin Clark's shooting ability in terms that reflected similarities to his own style. That's not media hype or manufactured praise. That's respect coming from someone who sits at the very top of basketball history. But what made Curry's comments even more meaningful was that he didn't limit the conversation to shooting. Sometimes, what isn't said becomes just as noticeable as what is. Jason Tatum was asked a simple question, one that seemed to have an obvious answer. Which WNBA player does he enjoy watching the most? It was an easy opportunity to praise the player who has become the center of attention in women's basketball, support the league's growth, and echo the admiration many other NBA stars had already expressed. Instead, Tatum gave a brief, matter-of-fact answer that surprisingly didn't include Caitlin Clark at all, and that omission immediately caught people's attention, creating a different kind of conversation, one built not around what was said, but around what wasn't.
Favorite WNBA player? A'ja Wilson.
That's all there was to it. No explanation, no added context, no mention of Caitlin Clark's impact, just a straightforward answer. To be clear, A'ja Wilson is one of the greatest players in the world and a multiple-time champion. This isn't about taking anything away from her accomplishments. But for many fans, the surprise wasn't who Jason Tatum mentioned, it was who he didn't. Nobody questions Angel Reese's talent or her importance to the game. But because Clark has been at the center of the biggest basketball story of the year, selling out arenas, driving television ratings, and bringing new eyes to the Wnba, some fans interpreted Durant's answer as a deliberate choice, rather than a random one. Fair or unfair, that's how much attention surrounds Clark right now. When someone with Durant's influence chooses another name, people notice. And those reactions highlight just how polarizing and powerful Caitlin Clark's presence has become. Because this goes beyond statistics. When NBA stars begin openly sharing their opinions, whether supportive, neutral, or different, it reveals something bigger. Caitlin Clark hasn't simply entered the conversation, she's changed it. She has become the player who forces opinions, the player who sparks discussions, the player who makes people take a side. Pascal Siakam acknowledged the incredible support and attention surrounding her. Stephen Curry saw qualities in her game that reminded him of his own. LeBron James praised the impact she's already had on basketball. Tyrese Halliburton spoke about her as one of the sport's biggest attractions. Luka Doncic focused on what she's doing at the professional level. Trae Young embraced the idea of competing with her in a shooting contest. Gino Auriemma openly admired her game. Paul George offered perspective and context that many overlooked. Meanwhile, Jason Tatum's omission created a conversation of its own, and Kevin Durant's choice led to even more debate. And perhaps that's the point. Greatness rarely produces indifference. It creates strong opinions. It generates praise and criticism. It inspires admiration and disagreement. And that's exactly what Caitlin Clark has done. There's no denying the scale of what she's accomplished. The crowds, the television ratings, the attention, and the pressure that comes with becoming one of the biggest names in basketball. Those are things usually reserved for superstars. That's not noise. That's influence. And perhaps the most remarkable part of all is that her story is still being written. She's only getting started. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss future updates. And be sure to check out the next video on your screen. We'll see you there.